All right, so now I'm going to introduce our speaker. We are very lucky to have tonight school board member Kathleen Brow. She was elected to Virginia Beach School Board in 2022 and represents District 10. She currently serves on the Policy Review Committee, the Governance Committee, and the Bayside High School PPEA Committee, that stands for Public-Private Educational Infrastructure Act. Kathleen earned an associate's degree from Tidewater Community College, a bachelor's degree in business administration from Liberty University, and she's currently pursuing a master's degree in public policy. She coaches athletics, dedicating the last 26 years of her life to figure skating. Kathleen is a dedicated wife, mother to 4, proud 14-year resident of Virginia Beach, and her and her husband have 3 school-age children that attend our public schools. Kathleen's interest in the school board began when the majority advocated for a tax increase to begin all-day kindergarten 1 year early instead of allocating funds from within the existing budget. She also recognizes and deeply respects the invaluable role of parents in their children's lives. If you would all please welcome Kathleen. Can't speak loud like me. Use this. And you have to actually speak into it.
Can you guys hear me without it?
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
I can hear you okay.
Okay. Well, put it there. If you needed, somebody in the back goes, I can't hear.
Okay. I will use it if somebody has any issues hearing me, but I'll use my coaching voice. So I'm very excited to be here. Feel like it's been a little bit since I've been here and got elected. I'm not 100% sure if I've been here since we passed valedictorian, salutatorian, and class rank, but if I haven't, we did that, so I'm happy about that. And most recently, I'm sure that a lot of you have realized that we passed policies consistent with the 2023 model policies. So I know a lot of you probably have questions about that, so I'm going to start with that. So the progress with the model policies started about a month ago when we were doing policy 5-31, which is a student records policy. And the policy review committee had not added in the definitions because they didn't like the model policies. And when we got to the dais, I made an amendment. It was actually a motion. I told everybody it was going to be an amendment, so I just made it as the initial motion. I'm just going to read this. I used the definition straight from the model policies to do so in 2 parts. We added a definition of parents. That's pretty straightforward. Sex, for the purposes of identifying an individual, means biological sex. We added the definition of transgender student to mean a BBCPS student whose parent has stated in writing that the student's gender identity differs from the student's sex, or an eligible student, that's somebody that's over 18 or emancipated, who has stated in writing that their sex differs from their gender identity. At that point, any writing would be memorialized into a paper record. And then for the student records, we said that would require use of the student's legal name and sex as designated in the official records. May not be amended unless the eligible student or the parent of a minor submits a legal document. So be a birth certificate, state or federally issued identification, passport, or court order substantiating the change in the student's legal name or sex. So that was really, really pivotal to have passed. That passed on a 7-4 votes. So that was good. You know, we got one of the other sides to come with us on that. Ternace Riggs voted for it. So happy about that, and that plays into the policies here, which I'm going to go through what I believe to be the most critical parts that people are most concerned about. So that, and you know, again, we modified these to make these Virginia Beach policies. That's what the board did. We attempted to adopt Youngkin's model policies verbatim. So there was no confusion, no question. That did not pass in a 5-5-1 vote. So we had to continue trying to get these passed with that vote set up. So the student records was section C of the model policies, and of that came identification of students. So section D2 of policy 57.1 for those of you that want to write it down, and I can give anybody else these numbers if you want to look them up later. School personnel shall refer to each student using only the name that appears on the student's official record, or B, a nickname that the eligible student or the parent of a minor student has designated in the student's official record, or C, a commonly associated name that appears in the student's official record. If the parent notes the nickname supersedes the official name, the nickname is to be used. So right there we have parental rights in play. Parents get to make that decision. Similar language for pronoun usage. They will use the pronoun associated with the student's sex or gender identity as set forth in the record, or the pronoun that the eligible student or parent of a minor student has designated in the student's official record. So that's the pronoun and the names, which to me as a parent was a really big drawback from this division. You know, I have a kindergartner. She actually is in a private school. I couldn't stomach the idea of sending a 5-year-old off to school knowing that my kid could be going by a different name and gender and identity, and I would have no idea. So I'm very, very, very happy about that particular change. Restrooms, locker rooms, and changing facilities. So we do have the Grimm versus Gloucester case, and this kept coming up on the dais, and I kept pointing out, you know, Grimm versus Gloucester is narrow. It's narrow. You know, and it's not, it doesn't really matter where you stand on Grimm versus Gloucester. We do have to deal with Grimm versus Gloucester. However, Gavin Grimm, parents were aware of the gender identity at all times. There was a gender reassignment surgery. There was a medical diagnosis from a doctor, which required at least 6 months of a pervasive belief. And of course, there was that sex change surgery and hormones. There was a court order with a new birth certificate, a new driver's license. All of that was brought into the school, and they said, okay, you can use the bathroom in which you identify. So that went on for 7 weeks until their school board voted that out. So those were the parameters surrounding the case. It never addressed locker rooms. It never addressed athletics. It never addressed overnight field trips. So I kept trying to say that from the dais. Everybody said, no, we have to let them go wherever they want. I said, no, it's narrow. I kept saying it's narrow. And our administration heard that, evaluated that, and they decided that those were factual statements, and so these represent that. And that's something I'm happy, because there was a huge shift from what they were 2 weeks ago to what they were 2 nights ago. So it says students are entitled to be in safe and use restrooms, locker rooms, and changing facilities without harassment, discrimination, fear, or intimidation. Students will use the restroom that corresponds to the student's sex as designated in the official record, which would indicate that official record that in order to comply with Grimm versus Gloucester, that they would have to have submitted a passport, a driver's license, or a birth certificate in order to go anywhere else. And then every single student has access to a single use facility, whether or not they're transgender or not. So everybody has that privacy, no matter how they identify. And you'll see that same language for locker rooms. Students will use the locker rooms and changing facilities that correspond with students' sex as designated official records. There was one little hiccup on Tuesday night. You know, Mr. Culpepper and I had talked during the day, and it said athletics would be separated by sex in the student's official record. And I said, you know, nobody else seems to be seeing that, but do you see it? He's like, I don't know how you can't see it. So because you can change your identity with your sex in the student's official record with a driver's license or birth certificate, that would mean that a biological boy could end up competing in girls' sports, and I did not want that window of opportunity at all. So he proposed a amendment to their initial, and I'm trying to see if I have their initial one, but their initial one said student records and official student record. He proposed an amendment that said for athletic activities separated by sex, the appropriate participation of students shall be determined by sex rather than gender or gender identity. Reasonable modifications will be made to the extent required by law. Students granted such reasonable modifications must also comply with VHSL Rule 28A-8-1, transgender policy as amended. So we're really counting on our legislators to make sure that there's no laws here with this language. And but for right now, this will prohibit boys from participating in girls' sports. For a minute, it looked like the amendment was not going to pass. And then I just said, you know, we have to make sure that we protect our girls' sports. So I'm happy that that passed. The amendment passed with 8 votes. The model policies passed with 9 votes. So this had sweeping support across the whole entire school board. And quite frankly, we're right back where we were a month ago. So we could have had this in place before the start of the school year. It's a little frustrating, but here we are. At least we got it done. And these are supposed to go in effect November 8th. So there's going to be a training day, and all those principals will be trained, and that's going to go into effect. So, superintendent search. Most of you all are probably well aware Aaron Spence has left to Loudoun County. And so I put my card out for those of you that were here right before the meeting started. My card's about. The school board website is on that card. We are currently getting community input right now, and that community input is going to be dumped along with the school board's input, along with the city council members' input, along with everybody that we brought in to give interviews input, into a leadership profile. So it's very, very important to make sure that, even though it may only be a small amount, that we use this process as we can to put that input in there. There's a comment box. I highly recommend putting some comments in about any dissatisfaction with the focus being on the wrong issues for the school division, any thoughts about the cost of buildings. I think all of that input needs to be included while you have the chance, because we will get those comments as a board verbatim. So the board needs to see the community's not enjoying what they're seeing right now, and that we need to do just a little bit better.
The questions were off base.
Yeah, so the questions are a little bit harder, but I think if you fill in the comment section, they're going to be able to filter through that. And I did have my personal interview with the consulting firm, and I can actually tell you what I said to them. There was a couple things. But one of the main things that I said was, let's see if I can even locate it very quickly or not. If I can't locate it quickly, okay. My main thing was that one of the main things was that I want a superintendent that's going to focus on core educational values instead of utilizing our student base for future social changes. That was one of them, because we need to get to the work of making sure we're establishing educational excellence in Virginia Beach. Another one was I want somebody experienced with workforce development, VOTAC, and alternative career paths, because that's something that I ran on, something the community has told me was important. So there was obviously a few other things, but that was the core of what I put in there. So feel free to put your own comments in there, but those are just a couple that might give you some ideas.
They said that that thing had closed. I got a notice saying that that piece had closed.
So they were going to close it, and then I guess they were dissatisfied with the level of inputs that they got, being only 3,000 people. So they opened it again to get more community engagement.
Well, may I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Don't send it out and say it's going to close again in a couple of days, because then your input gets changed very quickly. If you give a time frame so that you can and have some decent questions to go with it, because the questions that they're asking are not what you would put on a superintendent level.
Well, it's closing tomorrow. I mean, that's the consulting firm that picks the questions. The school board didn't.
Get a new firm.
Huh? Get a new firm?
Yeah. Well, they lost.
Well, again, I would use the comment box as heavily as
I did.
as possible. And any student input, if we can get any students to input. Ninja, I see you back there.
I know, I'm thinking.
Your students should put some input in. There was only 5 at the time we had the governance committee. So students, and there's a few members of the school board that have a tendency for some reason to weigh those much more heavily. They are important. I'm not saying that they're not important, but adults are also
Most
important.
students would be able to understand the questions that they're asking.
And so that's where we're at with that now. The leadership profile will be presented to the school board on November 14th. We will have to vote on that leadership profile. December 12th, we are going to have a seminar on the interview process. We'll have a closed session with the slate of candidates. The reason this is closed is because people aren't going to apply if they have a 1 in 40 chance and lose their jobs for it. So this is a pretty standard process as I understand it when it comes to executive levels. You may get down to the last 2 and those will come out publicly, but you don't have everybody be scrutinized for applying other places when they're not even close to being your final pick. So that's, yes. So, and Ms. Weems, this is her 3rd, maybe her 4th superintendent search, and her institutional knowledge on this is very, very critical. She said she highly recommends a closed process. Last time some of the candidates got out, all of the applicants removed themselves from the pool and they had to start back over for brand new because those people didn't want to lose their jobs and their security where they were at. So that was, somebody leaked closed session info.
Interview for a superintendent sitting beside us. Do they usually have superintendent experience somewhere else?
Generally, I would think so, yes. Generally. I don't think that it's necessarily required, but I could tell you with this particular board that we have right now, I don't think that we are going to be able to hire a superintendent that has not run a division before successfully. So, we have to be, say that again?
Not this size. This is a big school board.
Yeah, I mean, and the last superintendent ran a very small school division before coming here. A smaller one's fine. I think a chief of staff would have been fine, maybe even somebody with some high-level executive experience. The right person for the job, which is what I care about. But I don't know that with this particular 11-member board, we're going to be able to go seek out those diamonds in the rough and recruit somebody that does not have superintendent experience. So we're likely going to be looking for somebody with that superintendency experience right now. I don't rule anybody out. Yes?
And look, I have a suggestion. Can you get somebody with a master's or a doctorate degree in the Department of Education to be the superintendent instead of going like outside of the box?
Well, so there's requirements by the Virginia Department of Education for who can qualify to even be a superintendent. You can only select superintendents that meet the criteria and follow that law. So you do have to pick somebody that has the qualifications that the Virginia Department of Education has outlined. Now, you sometimes do a waiver process. You know, again, back to the body, you have to make sure that you have a body that would be willing to do that process. I don't know if that's what we would have right now to go about that type of thing. You know, you saw it in Spotsylvania. Spotsylvania County did go through a waiver process. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Spotsylvania much. They have a division about our size, and you know, they have a largely conservative board, and the superintendent they have hired there did not have any superintendency experience. There was some other upper level executive experience, but you know, they've done a pretty good job making sure that there's no pornographic books in the library and stuff like that. So they've really done a lot. You know, they are a highly criticized board. I'm sure Vic knows. They're highly criticized board by one side of the political spectrum, but I think they seem to be doing a pretty good job. They have a list of which books were removed. You can look at those books. They say exactly why those were removed. Some of them are the most egregious ones. They had pulled out To Kill a Mockingbird at one point. They put To Kill a Mockingbird back in because that's unreasonable, right? You know, that's not the types of books we're worried about. You know, the books that I'm worried about are books like Genderqueer, you know, or there's another book that, you know, describes and depicts anal sex, teaches them how to do that. Those types of books do not belong in our school libraries. They just don't. Okay, so our semi-finalists, we will have about 6 of those. They're going to be planning to be interviewing the 5th and 6th of January. We will meet on the 6th of January late. We will debate upon which ones, and it will probably be a debate. Right. I would say discuss, but it'll be debate. Which 3 finalists we're going to have. Those 3 finalists will do a second round of interviews January 8th, 10th, and 11th. On the 11th, we are probably going to meet again, attempt to have a finalist selected that night if we can. It's going to be a really late night. And then the board agrees on the salary, and then the chair and vice chair are the ones that negotiate the salary. So that was something I didn't know about the process before I got on the board, is that the chair and the vice chair are usually charged with negotiating, and at times there's a statutory time frame of 180 days with an additional 180 days. So the person needs to be in the seat by the time 360 days is up, and so they have to give notice of their job. So you're really fighting the clock, and so the closer you are to that clock, the less power you have as a negotiating tool. So just so everybody's aware of how these salaries sometimes, I think, end up bloated, besides the fact that not everybody has an interest in being fiscally conservative about the salaries. I think sometimes the clock is the problem. If you're on day 179, that candidate knows that they have all the bargaining power, because otherwise the state picks for you. So,
Oh, wow.
yep.
Do you think the salary will go up to over 300,000 like
No.
Spence's did in last?
I have no idea.
It better not.
I told the consulting firm that I feel very uncomfortable with 300,000, but you know, it's going to be a board majority thing, and I don't know how much our city manager makes, to be honest, but do you know how much our city manager makes, Dee? It's up there, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah,
It is.
and I think he's, I don't follow city council as well as school board, obviously. I think he's done a much better job than the last person that was in there, but you know, me personally, over a few $1,000s, not 40 or 50, but a few. I'm not going to lose the right candidate over a few $1,000s. It's going to put us back on track. However, I want to be as conservative with that pay as possible, and there better be some serious negotiation going on.
Well, the severance package seems to be the key thing anymore.
Right.
To get, walk away with
Yeah.
way more than you're making.
Well, we didn't have to pay severance this go around, so that's
He's making over 300,000.
yeah. Spence
they're
making
over-
he's making $375 in Loudon, plus he got moving expenses
And the car.
and the
So
car.
you didn't have to pay severance on him?
Nope, no severance, so we got out on that because he left on his own.
All right.
Bill?
Getting back to the issue of qualifications for the position, do you know the qualifications well enough to be able to answer this question that rather than somebody with an advanced degree in education, is it possible to have someone with an advanced degree in management or in business or in the sciences?
No. Are you looking at it right now, Vic?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, they were making 263, 611, 40. So you're figuring, you know, most of the places did a 10% increase since then. So he's making close to that,
Who?
close to 300.
Who is?
The city manager.
Oh, the city manager.
Virginia
Okay.
Beach.
He was hired
But
at
the
270.
qualifications question, I'm not 100% sure offhand right now. That's something that I definitely would be delving into once
Well,
those
what,
candidates
can I ask you to
apply.
follow on, which is like, would you be amenable to voting for someone with a management advanced degree or a business advanced degree and not an education advanced degree? Because I sure do.
No.
So I go back to the board as a whole, okay? Because I'm just one person.
Right.
There is no way the board as a whole is going to support that. It's just not going to occur. Not with this board. I mean, you know, I don't speak for the other people, but I don't see it happening. I don't see that being feasible.
With all the things that are happening in the schools today, to have somebody come, I mean, you talk about small districts to bigger and bigger, and we're a pretty large district. To have somebody in a district that's smaller than us to actually see what they did under situational awareness, all this stuff like transgender, all this stuff with sport, all this stuff with harassment, and see how they handled it. If you don't have somebody that's already done it, it would be really hard to move somebody up the ladder
That's true.
without saying,
Yep.
what did you do in this circumstance?
That would be
That's
my
true.
qualification.
And did you hear that, Bill?
Yes, no, I.
So if they don't have experience in a division, it's going to be a challenge to know how they're going to handle such topics of education or even controversy. When they have run a division, you can easily look up that news, look at their policies, look at what they've done, see if they're fiscally responsible, see how their budget's been doing, see how healthy their SOL scores are, see whether or not their teachers are, you know, getting people reading on grade level. That's important to me too.
How many disciplinary actions?
How many well, sometimes they'll shove those under the rug, so.
One could argue that someone who's managed a large corporation has faced all the same sorts of issues.
But that's a totally different
That's a totally
atmosphere,
different-
and you're having, the superintendent is gonna have to deal with the Department of Education and stuff like that. There's just institutional experience that you can't get in a regular manager position. That's right. That atmosphere.
And the other thing is Spotsylvania serves about 20,000 students, doesn't serve 65,000, so it may have been a little bit easier for that superintendent to step into that role, but anyway, so that's where we are with the superintendent search.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How much money has the school board actually spent on all this transgender? Well, do I have to FOIA it?
You would not be able to get it via FOIA without having to pay a substantial sum of money because it's not information that's been compiled already. So a lot of those salary costs and all of that are sunk costs. You know, there are salaries that we were going to pay anyway. Sometimes they're doing other things. I'm sure there's a mathematical equation, and I have actually, this was something I complained about to somebody. I said, you know,
So
I
the
am
question's
infuriated by all the staff hours we've wasted on this.
So then again, the subject has already been broached, am I correct?
Yep, oh yeah, yep,
Okay, so it's been a broached subject
Yep.
before the school board.
yep.
Okay. That's
Okay,
all I
we have a
can-
hand
Yep,
back there.
it's-
If everybody could raise their hands.
It's been a question, Ninja.
Okay, that's all I
Hi,
can.
I have a question. I don't know if it falls under school board or something else. I don't know who to ask, so I figured I'd just ask. I know when I got out of high school, I was ill-prepared to read insurance contracts, housing, mortgage loans, and stuff like that. What would it take to properly prepare our younger generation financially? And, you know what I mean, like a home ed class, like how to make something more than ramen noodles. And microwave your pizza, you know what I mean, like real stuff, like a course that could incorporate like going into the parking lot and changing tires and changing your oil for yourself, something just basic.
I like that idea. So we do have a financial literacy course that we offer as a division, which is, you know, good. We're moving the needle on it, but you're right. I don't think that we're, you know, showing kids how to really navigate the things that life is going to throw at them, which is why I support, you know, the workforce development, vocational options, other career readiness stuff. And you're right, you know, I graduated high school and I had the same problem. I just clicked the contract and sign it and hope it works out. So that's not good. I don't do that anymore.
Junior Achievement used to offer that.
Junior achievement?
Yes, I used to teach a class, much to that. It was a 9-week course through that. And it happened in the 8th grade. Junior Achievement, you might want to approach them and see if they can resurrect that type of thing.
Good idea. I'm gonna catch up with you so you can remind me to write it down. I don't have a pen right here.
I mean,
I know that they have an equity department, which is money that's being spent, and CRT, is that being rooted out, or is it going to be rooted out, equity?
There is a executive order to remove critical race theory. So far as meeting everyone's unique needs, I don't know that I see that going anywhere anytime soon. Junior Academy. The amount that they're spending on that department is much lower than some other wasteful spending. And I will say that we had somebody in there before I was on the board, and I'm trying to be cautious because I don't want to get into personnel matters. So I was a citizen at that time, and that person was not so great, but the person that is in there does not believe in equal outcomes. They believe in equal opportunities. So I appreciate that over what was there. It's much lower salary from what, as I understand it at least.
Okay.
So the person that was there before though was
Thick as next.
difficult.
Two things, your city manager makes $303,345.12.
303.
303, 345, 12.
Oh, says.
He started at 270.
You know I'm gonna be hunting for that.
Thank you.
No,
Second
Plus
thing, one of the graphs that I sent to the school board was where reading levels, history, stuff like that, and where that was starting from when Spence got there, and then how they've gone down.
Mm-hmm.
I did have one of your illustrious colleagues discuss that privately. My question is, can we start going back to that? Because I have the stats, and I will be very unmerciful in how, one, they have gone down. Two, I compared them also with Chesapeake, because normally Virginia Beach and Chesapeake get compared, Norfolk and Portsmouth get compared. When I go to Norfolk, that's how I raise hell. So a number of them are getting very, very close to what Chesapeake has. And I think that is a big issue that really, now that we've cleared out the trans stuff, has to be worked on now.
And you're
Because
specifically talking about reading and writing?
reading, writing, I think, let me see, I put reading, math, science, I think it was history, and there was one other, I know it was 5 graphs.
So I'm gonna talk about the reading and writing part first. So about a month ago, I had this, what I thought was a brilliant idea, that we would do something similar to the Virginia Accelerated Grants, but right here in Virginia Beach. You know how they gave $1,500 to families to be able to pick some place to get some tutoring, to get caught back up from any potential learning loss in COVID. I wanted to do something on a smaller scale for students that were not reading on grade level or writing on grade level and were severely behind, so that we could boost them up. Some of those that are behind are only behind a couple months, but maybe 15% of them are severely behind. And Governor Youngkin actually donated his salary to something called the Life Enrichment Center here. They do tutoring for reading to get kids reading, and they actually did a presentation. And they said, you know, if you're not reading on grade level by grade 3, your likelihood of being on welfare or incarcerated is over 50%.
Yes.
And if you look at the stats, not even just the averages, you see that there's a significant disparity in some minority communities on those. So, you know, how do we boost everybody up? We boost all of the kids that are struggling up. And so I wanted to do a $500 grant, but it turns out that our governor has rolled out an initiative called All In, and these kids will get 10 hours of tutoring if they're behind from now until the end of the year. So we're going to be discussing that in our upcoming school board meeting, how they intend to do that. I know that in another district, somebody said they wanted a concrete plan before they voted on the grant funds, and I'm hoping to see something similar here in Virginia Beach. I want it.
Need much time to get it rolled out, though.
Yeah, I know, but they're going to need to get straight to it. I mean, they have a lot of big tasks to do, and instead they've spent a lot of time arguing over silly nuances. Okay, Ninja.
Is there a tentative timeline on that tutoring grant application status? Like, when can people apply for it?
The $1,500 one?
Any part of it, really? Because there's some church groups and people that volunteer in Section 8 in order to take them to and from church when their family's constantly working or whatever.
I'm gonna have to follow up with you. I believe the $1,500 grant may have closed, but it may have reopened. And so that money goes directly to the tutoring center. And then the one I was talking about, we're gonna have to table that until this all-in initiative is done, because it would be silly to spend taxpayer money again without seeing the results of this all-in initiative first. So I agree to wait. If it's not as successful as I like, I would probably be seeking to use some reversion funds next year to attempt to fund this. So that's something I'm hoping to do and champion here soon.
Behaviors
Yep.
have really declined. I've got a friend who's working in middle school, and she's had students pulled out of her class every single day. She's never had it like that before.
What gives?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you have a culmination of what I would consider to be bad policy, the positive behavioral interventions and supports. You know, the very first meeting of the school board year, we had a vote on PBIS, as it's called, which is a positive reward behavioral system. We had 5 votes to discontinue it. We had 6 votes to continue it. A lot of people don't really completely understand what it is, but the general gist of it is that if you're being bad, we're going to offer you a reward to do what you're supposed to do, and the kid that's sitting in their seat being good gets nothing. And we aren't just doing this for teachers. I mean, we aren't just doing this for students. they're offering this PBIS initiative all the way up through the teacher and principal echelons. It's filtered through every single level. And so, it's minimal, and I believe it's come from federal and state grants. It's
Still costs the taxpayer.
minimal. I haven't looked at the budget since budget season, but I seem to recall about $100,000. I can get back to you. Let me.
Okay, Teresa had a question and then Bill had
PBIS
one.
costs. Okay, Teresa?
I did have a question on the performance of the children, because back when I scored SOL for Pearson, one thing that I noticed, for instance, and some of my friends have heard me say this, if you are a junior in high school and you're asked to write an essay and you write one sentence, you get credit for that. So I think they might want to look at the standards that these kids are being expected to. In other words, if the scores look good, they're not really, because they don't know how to write an essay. Not even a standard 5-paragraph one.
So what's the
I
question?
can actually tell you, so they brought us some of the SOL standards for 8th grade.
Oh.
There's been some questions that I have had to really think hard about. So I'm not sure if the standards of the SOLs are considerably low, but I haven't looked at every question. They may have brought me the hardest question.
See, I would have threw that.
I don't know. But I mean, so far as the SOL standards and grading, I think that's outside of the umbrella of the school board. But so far as grading students in Virginia Beach, we need to make sure that they don't get a grade for work they didn't do. We do have a problem in Virginia Beach of principals shifting grade books behind the teachers, and that doesn't support our teachers. And that was actually one of those things I brought up to that consulting firm as well. I still haven't talked about the PPEA either.
Okay, Bill, did you have a question on this topic, or did you want to let her go on to the?
I'll let her go.
Okay, so the PPEA, Public-Private Infrastructure Act, we got an unsolicited proposal from SB Ballard, and they wanted to couple 3 schools together and give us a guaranteed maximum price. Yeah. The initial commitment is really more of a coin toss than anything, because you still get the designs. So at this point, we haven't really lost yet. I didn't support it because I'm looking at how much we have fully programmed versus how much the best guess at the GMP is, guaranteed maximum price. And I can see the writing on the wall that they intend to come to us and tell us to ask City Council for more money, and I will not support that. So I have already said, nope, not doing it. You know, we are getting maybe a little more transparency in this process than I would have thought we're getting. However, right now we're redoing educational specifications because, you know, I pointed this out over and over again. I got a call from our last superintendent asking if he could put some language into the CIP, which he did do, but I ultimately did not support because the costs and the inflation that they were trying to project based on the size of the building, which I believe is too big, didn't seem to add up to me, and so I couldn't support a number that high, especially when, you know, it's in the document, they know you're planning for it, so of course every builder is going to bring you that price. So anyway, but PPEA interim agreement, it passed, so we're in the design process. I will say that we have 3 more public meetings, and as I understand it, whether or not it will happen or not, but this is supposed to be the upcoming batch of meetings where they're going to say how much certain things cost, and the community is supposed to weigh in on how much they want that or don't want it. So these are the meetings that I think are probably the critical ones to attend. There's been a few in between. After the first couple, I kind of pulled back until we got to this portion to say, all right, these are the ones we really need to be at. You have October 26th from 6 to 7:30. That's Bayside High School Library. October 23rd from 6 p.m. to 7:30 at Williams Elementary School. Bayside 6th Cafeteria. That's the Williams Elementary, Bayside 6. I don't know why it says Williams Elementary, but, oh, I guess it's one. October 25th, 6 to 7:30, Princess Anne Library. So those will be the final community input sessions, and there was one that there was quite a few people at. I mean, I said, you guys are gonna get to these things, and you were there.
I was there.
She was there, Ron was there, Dan Chang was there. Several of you all attended, and
They have something online, does the cost analysis on it, already online?
no, they have every time they have a thing, they have a scan sheets to give your input, but just like other things, they set it up so that the questions are set up in a way that they get the answers that they want or the results that they want.
But that's not, okay, so we don't have time to analyze this before we get in there, correct?
No, they're gonna give you the information when you're in there. I might get a little bit of a heads up because I'm at, several additional meetings that are not the community input. I'm at the teacher input and staff input sessions, and so they tend to be the same portions of the process. Yes.
Are they gonna build these schools? I know they built College Park Elementary as supposedly a self-sustaining, all the energy saving and everything else, which what I've heard through grapevine didn't pan out. Are these schools gonna be built in traditional fashion, or are they gonna try to build these things supposedly saving all this money?
Are they gonna be?
You're talking about the LEED certified.
Right, because this is something in my industry, what I do. Nowhere have I seen where they say you save energy, that you save money.
Well, I
Always
think they're
costs more.
twofold. So the question is, does the energy savings justify the increase in cost? And is there a positive benefit? And what is the cost
What's the
of
payoff?
maintaining those savings?
That's right.
Which those are all cost benefit analyses that I have specifically requested. One of the things was, oh, we have to put the HVAC inside the building. And I said, well, at $900 a square foot, if that isn't a city or state requirement,
Put it outside.
I would like to see how much the increase in square footage costs to the building and how long the additional lifespan of these units is to justify that dollar amount. Because if you're just telling me that that's the way that it needs to be, then I'm going to be skeptical. Prove me wrong, I'll accept I'm wrong. But until then, I want to see the evidence of any cost savings. So I would envision that what they intend to present likely will be LEED certified, which we're going to have to get into that discussion about that cost again at that time. And I'm hopeful that they bring that up at these community input meetings. And I'm hopeful that some people will come complain about it if they don't like it.
I'll say this about the LEEDs thing. To me, if somebody promotes that, then they should offer a guarantee that at what point will that pay back. If we're going down the energy saving route, then where is your guarantee to say that we're going to save that money? Not energy. Great, we can put solar panels on, we can put windmills up and everything else, spend a lot more money saying we're saving energy, but where is the cost going to come back to say if we built a traditional building that now this one is paying for itself? If you can't cross that barrier within, I'd say, half the lifetime of that building, then there's no reason to do it. Because now you're at the 50% mark, and almost everybody knows that 50% of something, that's usually the point where you decide to replace it, repair it, whatever.
Yes.
And that's the thing I think in a lot of these cases, and I've run into it, is that they'll tell you you're saving energy, but they never tell you you're going to save money.
Yeah, and to that point, I would say that my personal biggest concern and the biggest thing that I'm making it known about is the size of these buildings. We have 199 square foot school and a 200,000 square foot school, and they're proposing these to be near 350,000 square feet. That's the very, very first place that I'm going to be making my comments known. And it's funny, they did get up and give a presentation at a workshop here recently, and they found some efficiencies to save some square footage, and it was 200 square feet. And I was like, not the square footage I was looking for, guys.
Is it for the same amount of students?
Same population, and actually our population's been declining. There is no projections of an increase in population in the next 5 years in Virginia Beach City Public Schools. Vic?
Yeah, I was gonna say something about the size and less students. Second thing, on, one thing Chesapeake did is they went through and did a study and basically looked at each school. They split, you know, elementary, primary, middle, and high schools. And actually had a third company come in, I will say that, money was worth it, and take a look at actually how old the schools were, whether they had, you know, asbestos, they had all, they did a lot of that in multiple studies. I still have the foldouts, and they are actually very good. It was worth the money. They got people from the communities from all around to come in and kind of weigh that. And then they had something to say, you know, what school really sucked. You know, maybe Bayside High School is, you know, it's end of its life, it's trashed, we got to do something. So they ranked the schools that way, and they also had what the percentages